What is NuxtJS? NuxtJS is a framework based on the Vue.js framework and is typically used to implement server-side rendering or universal applications. NuxtJS also allows you to generate a static website, and for example, you can generate the static assets of your application and upload that to an S3 bucket on AWS. You can also create a traditional single-page application using Vue.js. So what are the main features of NuxtJS? You can write Vue files or components, just like in a traditional single-page application with Vue.js. You get server-side rendering, you get a powerful routing system with asynchronous data. We're going to see that in a minute. You get static file serving, bundling and minifying for your JavaScript and CSS files. You can easily manage the head element, the title tag, the meta tag, and some others. You get hot module replacement in development, and you get preprocessor support for SAS, LESS, and some others. What are the modules that are part of NuxtJS? You get Vue 2, you get Vue Router, you get Vuex. I already added videos about these topics, so definitely check those videos out. And you also get Vue Server Rendering and Vue Meta. The last two are the ones that we are going to cover today. What are the benefits of using server-side rendering with Nuxt.js? You get an improved user experience, you get an improved on-page SEO. Nuxt.js will fetch the Ajax data and is going to render all the Vue.js components into HTML on the server. This feature allows the search engine crawlers, such as the Googlebot, to index the website with all the HTML DOM elements in the client. With single-page applications, there is no content initially because all the HTML is created on demand after the JavaScript has loaded. And you can easily manage every page title and meta tags to include the keywords that you want to target. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. Okay, let's create our Nuxt shop posting application. And let's create the initial structure of the project. And to do that, we need to run npx create-nuxt-app. And the name of the application, in this case, is going to be a shop posting app. The project name is going to be, I'm going to leave it as it is, shop posting app. Description, pragmatic reviews as the author. I'm going to use npm as the package manager. For the UI framework, I'm going to select Beautify. You have a lot of functions here. You have and design view, bootstrap view, view 5, Vilma, element, framework, iView, tachyons or something like that, tailwind CSS, and Beautify.js. Remember to check out the previous videos that I uploaded. I uploaded some videos about Beautify.js, so definitely watch those videos so you have an understanding and you have some sample components and how to use them. Let's move on. And you can also select your server framework. You can select Adonis.js, Express, Fastify, Feathers, Happy, Koa, and Micro. These are the most popular servers out there. So I'm going to select the most popular one, that is Express. And here I'm going to select Axios. And I'm going to select ESLint. And the test framework, let's say Chess. And these are the two options that we have. We can select universal or server-side rendering or single-page application. I'm going to select universal to use the server-side rendering features of the framework. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select, yes, development tools, because I'm going to use Visual Studio Code for that. And this is going to install all the packages for us. Okay, and if we go now to the package.json file, we're going to see that we have our dependencies, our dev dependencies, where we have a node-mon, for example, and now we are going to start the development server, and it's going to start the node-mon service for us. And some other dev dependencies are NuxtJS Beautify, ESLint, Bubble ESLint, and some others. Chest, view chest. Okay, I'm going to close this. I'm going to open a new terminal, and I'm going to start the server. npm run dev. I'm going to open a browser really quick here on the right side of the screen, so we can see it side by side. Yeah, that's the port. Okay, and this is the application that it generates by default with the settings that we selected: Beautify, Express, Axios. So this is what generates. As we can see here, is going to automatically generate the routing across the pages. This is the index page that we can see here, this one, and there is a Nuxt link, I guess at the end. Yes, here. There is a Nuxt attribute in this button that allows us to navigate across the different pages. This continue button here is going to redirect us to the inspire page that is actually this one within the same folder. Remember that all the pages that we create here are automatically picked up by the framework and the routes are generated. If we create, for example, for this application, we're going to create a new page that is going to be shop postings. So it's going to pick that page up, and we are going to be able to access by entering here, for example, shop postings. And using that URL, we will be able to access that page that we create on that folder. Let's quickly review the directory structure provided by the framework. So we have an assets folder where we are going to include things like less and SAS assets. The components folder is going to include all the Vue.js components. The differences are going to be just some specific tags that are provided by Nuxt. After the components folder, we have the layouts folder where we can add the different layouts for the application. Then we have the middleware folder where we can add custom functions that are going to run before the pages. For example, if we want to add some kind of authentication for our pages, we can add that logic here. Then we have the pages folder that is going to include all the views for the application, and the router will pick up these pages and will create the URLs associated to these pages dynamically. That's a really cool feature from Nuxt. Then we have the plugins folder that are going to run before the init of Vue.js. And then we have the store folder here where we can include all the files required for Vuex. Another important folder that I forgot to mention is the static folder where we can include the robots file, for example. Okay, let's move on and let's create an about page for the shop postings app. I'm going to create a new file within the pages folder about that view. And as in any other Vue component, in this case, we are going to include here on a page. This is a specific concept of NuxtJS. So as usual, we include template tag and the script tag. And in particular, the script tag is going to be the place where we're going to include the head function, where we are going to define some metadata for the page. This is one of the benefits of server-side rendering, that we can add metadata, title, and some other data related to the SEO to optimize the SEO of our page on the server, so it gets rendered directly on the client. So that's the big difference with single page applications. First request, you get just an empty HTML, and then you start pulling different HTML contents, and the DOM gets rendered on demand. In this case, the DOM is rendered on the server, and you download it all at once. So first, let's add some really simple structure here. Let's add a big container. This is a beautified container, one of the containers that Beautify provides. And we are going to add an H1. Let's add a description here about shop postings app, and just a paragraph with some really simple description. Let's say this app will allow us to show all the shops published by the GitHub's shops public API. So that's what we're going to use. Let's add our head function first. Here on the head function, we are going to return an object that is going to include two things: the title of the page and the metadata of the page. We are going to add just one meta tag that is going to be the description tag. Okay, first we find the title. In this case, it's going to be the about shop posting app, and then we create an array where we are going to put all our meta tags. In this case, we are going to define just one meta tag. It's going to be the description meta tag. So we create an object metadata for that. And this is going to be the identifier. It's going to be description. The name of the meta tag is going to be description as well. I'm going to copy that. And the content of the meta tag is going to be something like find the best programming shops here. Okay, now if we go to the about URL, we're going to see that we have our about shop posting app with this paragraph. And if we go to the source, we're going to see that we have this meta tag as part of the HTML. We have the title, that is actually this one, about the shop posting app. And then we have our metadata description, that is this one. This is the name of the tag here, description. And then we have the content, that is find the best programming shops there. And besides the description meta tag that we find here, we can scroll down and we can see that also is rendering all the HTML directly on the server. There are some tags auto-generated by Nuxt, for example, this one, that server rendered through, because it's rendering all the HTML and the meta tags and title of the page on the server. So, and here is our H1, and here is our paragraph. That is actually the content that we can see here. Okay, let's move on and let's go to the layouts folder. Here I cleaned up the default values of this layout. And the basic tags that you need to include are these. You need to include the v-app and the Nuxt tag. The Nuxt tag, or the Nuxt component, will allow you to include pages. If you don't include this tag, you won't be able to include the pages that you define here on the pages folder. So that's important. What we're going to also include on this default layout, that is going to be part of all the pages in the application, is going to be a menu. And for that, we're going to create a new component that is going to be the app header component. And here we are going to create the menu, and we're going to iterate an array that is going to include the item and the label of the item and the page that is going to redirect each option of the menu. So let's do that. Let's include the template as usual and the script. And here we're going to include a big container. This is one of the elements that Beautify provides to add to organize our content. So, we're going to do a div. Assign a class to center everything, text center. And here we're going to create a menu using the vMenu tag provided by Beautify. And we're going to put this menu on top. And within this menu, we're going to create our list of options, the list. And within this list, we're going to include different items. The list item, and I'm going to keep it. Close this. And here, first we need to create our items object using the data function. So in this tag, what we're going to do is we're going to iterate over that array, and we're going to show all the different menu options there. So first, we need to assign a name to the component that is going to be app header. And then we're going to define our data function. And here we define our items array. Okay, and each item is going to be an object that is going to include two attributes: the title for the first page. We're going to define a home page where we're going to put all the shop postings with an image and a link and the title of the shop, and a to attribute that is going to be the name of the page where the user will be redirected once you click on this menu option. Name, in this case, the name of the page is going to be the index page. And we're going to also create another option for the about page that we just created. About, and it's going to be about. Okay, and here we need to use a before. And here we're going to access the item and the index of the item. in items. And we need to define, as usual, a key. We need to define a key for each item. That is going to be, in this case, the index. Okay, let's close this tag. And here, what we're going to add is a special tag provided by Nuxt, that is a Nuxt link. And here we define the destination of the link. That is going to be the to property of the menu item that we define on the array. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to add an item title using the blist item title, this one. And here I'm going to print out the title of the item. And that's pretty much it for the menu. And now I'm going to include that component here as part of the default layout. So we can show this menu as part of all the pages of our application. So app header from .components / app header. And here we need to find the components that we're going to use. An object, and we're going to include app header, and we need to actually include the component app header. And in order to render all the menu items, I'm going to include this template with a slot. Here. Okay, and now with this template, what I'm doing is I'm going to replacing each of these buttons, or sorry, the options below this button are going to be filled by these Nuxt links or links that we defined here. So if I go there, I can access the index page and the about page. So here is our menu. And now let's move on to the index page, where we are going to include the shop listing. So first we are going to create a component. It's going to be the shop post title component. That is going to include the image of the company. If we go to the GitHub shop posts API, here we can see that we're going to use this endpoint, the positions for a node, and we have these attributes on each of these shop objects: an ID, a type, a URL, created at, company URL, location, title, description, how to apply company logo. So what we're going to do for the first component is we're going to include a card with the title of the job and the company logo to show an image as part of that card. Okay, here in the index.view page, I already created an initial structure using a container, a layout, a container, and I'm going to use a row and multiple columns to show all the shop postings. And on this page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show just the image and the title with a link to go to the description of the shop. And that image and that link is going to be part of a new component that I'm going to create here. I'm going to call it shop post title. Let's create it, template, script. And here I'm going to use a B card. And this pcard is going to include an image, and it's going to include a divider, divider, and it's going to include a pcard title with the title of the job. That is going to be actually this attribute here, title. Okay, so pcard, okay, pcard title, like that. Okay, so let's define the props for this component, but first the name of the component. That is going to be shop post title, and the props that this component is going to receive from the index.view page is just going to be the job. We're going to receive the whole object here, and we're going to define that here. Shop the type of this prop is going to be an object. The shop object is going to be required, and the default value is going to be just an empty object. Okay, and here what we're going to use is the source of this image is going to be the shop.company logo here, and the card title is going to be the shop title. So we can add that here. Shop.title. That is this attribute right here. Okay. So this is pretty much the structure of the component. Then we can add some styling, but this is the information that we want to show and the basic tags for that. Let's go back to the index page, and here we're going to import that component. Import shop post title from that components shop post title, and here we define the components that we're going to use. In this case, it's going to be just the shop post title, and here we need to add a couple of things. We're going to include a data function that is going to include our model. Let's call it all jobs. There's going to be the array that we're going to fill with the contents provided by the GitHub's API. So I'm going to create the head function that we already created. Actually, I'm going to grab that from our about page. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to replace the contents. So I'm going to copy this here. Okay. And here I'm going to change the title to shop postings, and the identifier of the tag, meta tag, is going to be description. The name is going to be description, and here I can add something different like all shop postings from GitHub. And what we're going to add here is a special function from Nuxt that is async data that will allow us to pull the information from the GitHub API. So first I need to import Axios for that to make the call to the API. import Axios from Axios. And here I'm going to find an async function that is async data, async data, like that. And I'm going to receive two parameters, a params object and an error object. And here I'm going to use a try catch. Here I can invoke the error function, where I can pass an object with a message. For example, message, it's going to be a string, no shops found, for example. And I can also pass the status code. Let's say 404. And here I'm going to get the data from the API. Here I'm going to use await axios.get. And here I'm going to use the URL. But here, before doing the tutorial, I tested the API and I got some CORS issues. So I had to add some proxy settings. So I'm going to show you how to add a proxy so you don't have this issue, this CORS issue yourself. So you need to go to nuxt.config.js, and there is a section over here. Yeah, first we need to install, we're going to do that right now, npm install npm install NuxtJS proxy. Okay, and now I'm going to include that here as part of the modules. Proxy. And I need to add the proxy section here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to map a local URI with the target URL that is actually the GitHub URL. So I'm going to add the local endpoint that is going to be /API. And here I need to find an object. And this object is going to have the target. That is going to be the GitHub API. That is actually this one, shops.github.com. And I need to use a path rewrite, where I'm going to replace the API URI by the slash, so we can access the target URL. So I need to add basically this expression. I guess this is part of the next frequently asked questions. Here I think here is where I found this documentation. Let me check really quick. Max course. Sorry, Max course. Oh, course. Here. Here is basically what I'm using. So I'm going to copy this. And that's pretty much it. So let's go back to the index.view. So first, let's start again the server. Okay, let's go back to the index page. And here we can use HTTP, localhost, port 3000. That is the default port where the Nuxt application is going to run. /API, this is the URI that we defined here. And here we use the same that the URI, that the target URI is using to fetch the data. In this case, we're going to fetch the data using this search query string. So we're going to add that at the end. And I'm going to return all jobs data. And what we need to do with that data, we're going to loop through that array through this all jobs array that we are feeding here. And I'm going to pass that shop data to this shop post title component that is part of its props. Okay, I'm going to use this div to iterate over the array. B for job in all jobs. We need to add a key as usual. Key that is going to be the shop.id. Let's close this tag. And here I'm going to add a Nuxt link again. This is the way that Nuxt provides to navigate through our pages with server-side rendering. So I'm going to add the relative path that is actually shops. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to concatenate the shop ID. So for this, I'm going to create a new page, an underscore ID page within the shops folder, so we can access this ID as a parameter to fetch the API again and get the full details of the shop. Okay, I'm going to close this. And here I'm going to include the shop post title element, shop post title. And I'm going to show this element. I've been testing the API and there are some fields that are not completed. So I'm going to show only those jobs where the image is part of the payload and the title is part of the payload as well. So I'm going to add a condition that I'm going to only show this component if the company logo is present, company is not known, and if the title is not known. Okay, I need to close this tag. Okay, now we have our initial version of the website, including the images and the titles. And as we can see, we have the URL /shops / the identifier of the shop. And this is something that we're going to create in just a minute. And again, if we inspect the page, we're going to see that all the contents are rendered on the server. We have the title here somewhere, head, yeah, the shop postings, that is the title that we defined here on the head function. Let's go there. Here is this part. Okay, and also we have the metadata, that is the description, that is the one that we defined here. All shop postings from GitHub is this content attribute from this meta tag. And the same, of course, with the HTML, right? Here we have the rows, and here we have each of these cards. Where we have a div, we have the title, and here we should have the image somewhere. That is actually the background image. It's using the background image to include the logo of the company. And here we have the link that we generated dynamically. Okay, and now if we want to access to any of these URLs, we're gonna get an error. So in order to define this URL, we need to create a new folder here within the pages folder. That's going to be the shops folder. And in order to get access to this parameter, that is actually the identifier of the job, we're going to need to create a special page that's going to be the _id.view page. And that will allow us to access that identifier and invoke the GitHub API again and get the specific data for that shop identifier. So we are going to add the template and the script tag as usual. And here we're going to add a simple layout. The layout. And here we are going to add a shop post. For now, we are going to add a div. Shop post details go here. Okay, and here we have our page. And what we need to do here is we're going to create another component that is going to include the logo of the company, the title of the job, and the description of the job. So we're going to create that component right now. So let's go to the components folder and let's add a new file that's going to be the shop post. And as usual, we need to add the template tag and the script tag. We're going to use a big container. And we're going to use a B card to include all these 3 attributes from the shop description. That are going to be the image, the big image, the B card title, and the B card text. B card text. This B card text is going to include the description attribute that is actually in HTML format. So we're going to see how to fill that, or how to assign these HTML contents to this bcard text tag. Okay, first let's define the name of this component. That is going to be shop post. And then define the props that are going to be actually just like the shop post title component. So we can copy that and we can reuse that here. So show the image. The source of the image is going to be shop.company underscore logo. We're going to define a divider just to separate all these fields. The divider, and we're going to also use a divider here, and I think that's fine. And the title is going to be let's add a paragraph, and the paragraph is going to include the title of the job. And the text is going to include a bhtml tag, and using this we're going to be able to render the HTML that we receive as part of the description of the shop. The description. And that's pretty much the structure of this component. We can add some CSS later, but this is the information that we need to show, and these are the tags that we basically need to do that. So let's go back to the underscore ID page, and here we need to find the script tag, and we need to import the component that we created, that is the shop post component, from components slash shop post. And here we need to define first the components that we're going to use. Actually, one component, that is the shop post component. We're going to define the data function. Where we're going to return the current job, and as usual we have the head function. That the difference in this case is that we're going to fill the title and the meta tags dynamically using the data that is part of this shop post specifically. Previously, we created these meta tags and the title using static string, a hard-coded string. In this case, we're going to use a couple of functions to get the data from the shop post. So in this case, are going to be dynamic. Are going to depend on the shop post that we are accessing at that moment. Okay, in order to get the metadata and the title assigned to this page dynamically using the shop attributes, we're going to define the head function here. I'm actually going to grab the head function from here. And we're going to adapt this function to get the information from the actual job. So I'm going to add a couple of methods here at the end. This is going to be an object with a couple of functions. So the first function is going to be to get the data, to get the title from the job. Get meta title, and we're going to actually add the shop title plus the company. So that is going to provide some more information about the job. So we're going to return here this that current job post, this that current job post, that title. We're going to append a string. So this is the title at, and we're going to access the company name, that company. That is actually this attribute here. Here. Okay. So that's the function that we're going to use to fill the title of our head function. And I'm going to add another function for the meta description. That's going to be get meta description. And in this case, we're going to use basically the same. And we can add some more text. Get a position, or up, let's say something like apply for a position, for the position and we're going to call those functions from here. This that get meta title, and here we're going to use this that get meta description, like that. And now we get an error that says the shop post component has been registered but not used. Yeah, that's right, because we didn't do anything with that. So we're going to remove this div, and we're going to use the shop post component, and we're going to pass the job to it. That is going to be the current job post attribute that we find here as part of the data function. And now if we go there, we get an empty result because we need to fetch actually the data from the server again. So we're gonna need to define another async data function and use the ID that is part of the URL, this part actually, to call the GitHub API using the local proxy, of course, to avoid any CORS errors. And doing that, we're going to get the shop data. Okay, so let's add the async function here. That is async data. I'm going to grab actually this function from the index. Yeah, and I'm going to change a couple of things. I'm going to do that. And we need to change the URL. That in this case, we need to use backticks here. And we're going to need to use here a template literal. params.id. Using that, we're going to get access to the identifier that we get in the URL. And actually, I need to add, positions slash, and that should be it. If we go to the GitHub documentation, let's go back here, and here is somewhere here. If we want to access to the specific position, we need to specify the slash position, the identifier, that's JSON. And that's what we're doing here. The only change is that we're using the proxy. So that's why we add that slash API prefix as part of the URI. And here what we need to do is assign the result to the current shop post. And yeah, I forgot to import Axios. Let's do that. Import Axios from Axios. Okay, Axios. If I refresh, yeah, we get the description of the job. And now if we go back to the shop postings, we get the list with the images, and we can access any of these links. And I think I forgot to add a divider. We have the image, the divider, and the title. Yeah, a title here. Save this, and now we should get, now we get the title here. Okay, now we're good. Of course, this needs some styling. And another thing that is missing that I would like to add in a future video is actually make a friendly URL. So not this identifier, but use maybe the title plus the identifier, but something that includes the keywords that we want to target on our page for these, for the search engine optimization of the page. So again, if we go to the source code of this page, we're going to see that we have the title that is dynamic. That is the one that we assign here on the page. Lead from engineer at and the company. And here we also have this content for the meta description. Apply for the position, lead from engineer at the company. And the same with the HTML, right? Here we get the HTML and the image, I guess, here, background. So let's quickly review what we've done. We created a server-side rendered application using Nuxt. We are using Axios to consume the GitHub API. We are using a couple of components, one for the title, that is actually the ones that we are showing here, that we can see here, that include an image and the title of the shop. And then once we click on each of these posting, we access another page that includes a component with the image, the title, plus the description in HTML. And we are also adding the title and the meta description dynamically in this case, and statically here on the index here. And also we added the same title and meta description statically here on the about page. Of course, there is some styling to do for this page, but I think it's good enough for a proof of concept. So the middlewares that we create in a NuxtJS application are going to run in two cases. First, when we make a request directly to the application here. And second, when we navigate to a page using the Nuxt link tag here. We can set up a middleware at 3 levels. At the Nuxt config file level, and in this case, the middleware will be called for every route change. At the layout level, in this case, the middleware will be called in all the pages that include that layout. And finally, at the page level, and in this case, the middleware will be called when the page is loaded. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I also included a few links in the description below, so check them out. And now let's jump into Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I'm going to create a new middleware, a test middleware within the middleware folder. I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it test.js. And I'm going to create a really simple function, export default function, where I'm going to receive the route that we are accessing on the application, route, and I'm going to log a message and the path within that route. So console.log, and let's say current URI, and we're going to pass here the path of the route. I'm going to save this. Okay, now that we have our middleware function, I'm going to set up that middleware within this Nuxt config file. So I'm going to add a router setup here. And within that router, I'm going to assign the middleware that we want to run. And I need to include the name of the file, that in this case is test.js, but I know I don't need to include the extension. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to reload the server. And now if we reload the page, we're going to see that the server is going to log the message that we defined here and the path that is actually the root path. Let's open the console here on the browser. Let me clean this up. And if we go to the About page, for example, this is going to log the message just on the client. But if we refresh, and refresh this, it's going to log the message, or it's going to run the middleware on the server. Again, if I go to the home page, it's going to log, or it's going to run the middleware on the client. It's going to log the message here on the console of the browser. And the same if I go here to one specific shop, where it's going to log the message in the console of the browser. But if I reload, it's going to log the message, or it's going to run the middleware on server. Okay, that's how the middleware behaves when we set it up here on the nuxt.config file. I'm going to remove it from here. And I'm going to set it up on a page. So let's go to, I don't know, let's say the index page. And here we can specify middleware. Test. We set this. Okay, I'm going to restart the server now. Every time that we restart the server, the application is going to reload. That's why it's running the middleware on the server. If we go to the About page, nothing is going to happen because this middleware is going to run just on the index page. If we go back to the index page, we're going to see that the middleware is going to log the message on the client, or it's going to run the middleware on the client. Let's remove this. Okay, now let's create middleware to store the views on each of these shop postings. So I want to store locally. Every time that a user clicks on each of these shops, I want to count a new view on this page. So we're going to create a new function. Let's rename this one. Let's call it views.js. And here I'm going to receive the route, but we're going to use vuex, and we're going to define our store so we can store locally the views for each path. So let's go to the store and let's create a new index file where we're going to create this store. And here we're going to define export const state. As the state of the application, we are going to create a map where we're going to have the routes of each specific shop position as the key of the map, and as the value of the map, we're going to have the number of views or visits to that specific URL. So this is going to be views, and I'm going to initialize this as a new map. Okay, now I'm going to create the getters, export const, so we can get the views on each page and we can show that information on each page. Getters, and here I'm going to define a get views function where I'm going to receive the state of the application. And here I'm going to return a new function. This is going to be an arrow function where I'm going to receive the path and I'm going to return the number of visits. So I'm going to use the path to access this map that we defined as the state of the application, and I'm going to get the value associated to that path within the map, and this is going to give me the views for that page. So first I'm going to check if the path is already added to the map. So state that views, here I'm accessing the map, and then I'm going to check if the value associated to this path is undefined or not. So I'm going to pass the path, get, and I'm going to pass the path here. And if it's not undefined, I'm going to assign this to a count variable that I need to declare here first. Let count, this is going to be 0 by default. And here I'm going to assign state that views that get path. So here I access the value associated to the path because I know that is already defined. And here I'm going to return that number. And what I need to add here is a mutation. So every time that the user access a shop posting, this middleware is going to run because we're going to set the middleware to run within these shop posting pages. So export const mutations equals, and I'm going to find an add view function where I receive the state and the path. And here I need to do something pretty similar to the previous function, to the getter function, because I need to check if the path is already within this map. If it is, I need to increment the count. So I need to initialize the count again. Let count. By default, it's going to be 1, because if the path is not part of the map, I need to initialize it with just one visit, the initial one. So here I'm going to assign as the count is going to be state.views that get path plus bump, because I know that here this entry already exists within this map. And now I'm going to set the new value to the map. So state.views, here is our map, and I'm going to use the set function, where I'm going to set the number of visits to this path. So the key of the map is the path, and the value is going to be the count. Okay. So that's pretty much what we need for the Vuex store. Now I'm going to access the shop posting page, and I'm going to assign the middleware here. So middleware, equals to, in this case, it's going to be views. I'm going to save this. It's going to reload. Okay, and now let's see what happened here. Let me clean this. So if I refresh here, yeah, we're going to get the console log here on the server. Okay, I'm going to clean this. Okay, now we know that when we access each of the shop postings, the middleware is running. So let's try with this position. Okay, if I refresh, I get the log here. And if I go back to the home page, and if I access another shop post, for example, here, this one, this is going to log, or it's going to run the middleware on the client. Okay, so what we need to do here on our middleware is actually we need to commit this here. We need to commit this mutation that we created in our Vuex store. Okay, now if we go back to the views middleware, we need to add another parameter here that is going to be the store, actually, store and route. I'm going to remove this, and what we need to do here is we need to commit the new view, because this is going to run every time that we access a specific shop posting. So store that commit, and we need to pass the name of the function, of the mutation actually. It's going to be add view. And we pass the path as a parameter, route that path. Okay, and now what we need to do is, actually we need to show the views, right? So first what we can do is we can show that information on each of these cards. So what we need to do here is we need to pass the number of views to each of these shop posts elements. So this is the index file. This is within the index file, and we need to pass that information to the shop post title component. So let's go to that component, and let's add a new prop here. That is going to be, copy this. It's going to be views The type is going to be a number, required false, and default is going to be 0. This is from here. Okay, now we have the properties, shop, and views, and I'm going to add that information here. Below the title, I'm going to create another paragraph, just to keep it really, really simple. And let's say views. And here I'm going to show the views. Okay, let's refresh this. And now, as we can see, we get 0. Okay, now I need to go to the index file, and I need to pass that value here. So views, and we need to find a function here where we access the Vuex store and we get the actual views. And yeah, we're going to need to add the path as a parameter. That's actually this one. We're going to need to pass this to the function to access the map, which has these paths as the key, and the value is associated to this path. Okay, let's define the function. First, we need to import the getters. Import map getters from Vuex. And here we can define a computed property. Computed. That is going to be these map getters that we just imported. And within these getters, we're going to have a views property with the name of the function that is within the store. That is actually this one, get views. I'm going to copy that name. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to save this. If I refresh, okay, we get the shop postings. So now if I go to any of these shop postings, I should see the number of views increased. So yeah, I get 1 view here. If I go again, if I go back, I should get 2. If I access this one, I should get 1. Okay, now it's working as we expect. Okay, and another thing that we can do to show this information, we can add this information within each of these posts. So let's do that. So I'm going to add a new prop. Here is going to be the same that we added here. Use. And we're going to need to show that here somewhere. Yeah, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to show that below the title. This is going to be use. And we need to pass this value here on the ID page. That is actually the page that we have here. And again, we need to import the map getter function the same way we did here. Okay, we need to import the map getters from Vuex. And we need to create computed attribute like this. Okay, and I'm going to add the views here. And now, as we can see, we get the views. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to access. Yeah, this is the one that we already accessed. So back to home, and this is wrong. Yeah, because we are not calling the function from the ID. Okay, yeah, we are not calling the function. Okay, we need to do this actually. We need to, yeah, do the same here. Okay, and now I forgot to add this here. We need to call the function and we need to pass the current path. So that's what happened. Okay, I'm going to refresh this. Yeah, because this is current job post. Current job post that ID. Okay. That was the problem. Okay. I'm going back. Let me close this. And if I enter here, I should see 2 views. Yeah. I go back. I get 2 views. If I enter here, 1 view. So that's pretty much it. If I enter again, 2 views. If I go back, I see 2 views. Okay, let's quickly review what we've done so far. So I'm going to start the server, npm run dev. We implemented an application consuming the GitHub Shops public API. And what we are doing is we are showing the image and the title. And in the last video, we added the views. When we access each of these posts, we're going to see the number of views on each of these posts. And if we enter again, we're going to see 2 views and so on. But one thing that we have pending is improving the dynamic URLs. If we access the About page, for example, that's fine. So that URL is SEO friendly, and that's okay. But what happens if we go to a posting, for example, this one? We're going to see /shops / and an UID, the identifier that is not SEO friendly at all. If we go, for example, to medium.com, and they use this approach, they include the title of the post. In this case, the title is the ultimate way to slugify a URL string in JavaScript, and they create the URL, the URI in this case, appending the name of the post and the identifier. This is an approach that Medium is using, for example, but there are some other sites that are using the same approach. And this is the approach that we are going to use. We are going to, basically, this is the GitHub Shops API that we are using. So we are going to slugify this title, and we are going to append the identifier. We are going to generate the URL that way, and then we are going to extract the identifier so we can access this endpoint to get the details of the specific shop. So, for example, in this case, let's use a simpler, maybe shortcut, this one. So the slugified version of this string would be something like Python -software -engineer and then after that we are going to append the identifier. So once we access the URL, we need to add some logic to extract the identifier and then consume this endpoint here that requires to use the identifier of the posting. So we're going to create first the plugin to Slugify the URL to get this URI from this post, for example. So let's do that. One of the folders that comes with the NuxtJS installation is the plugins folder. So we are going to create a new plugin here in a new file. We are going to call it slugify.js. And here I'm going to actually use an algorithm that I found on this post. So I need to give credit to Matthias Heikman, and I'm going to use his algorithm as part of this plugin. I'm going to paste that here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another function, Slugify post, let's say, where I'm going to receive the identifier and the title of the post. And I'm going to append these two parameters, title plus hyphen plus ID. And I'm going to call the Slugify function. So from here, I'm going to return Slugify and this URL. Actually, this is a URI. Yeah, let's say that this is the URI. And now if I want to use this Slugify post function, I need to add it to the view prototype. So I need to import view from view. And I need to access the prototype of view to be able to access this function from within a method of a page, for example. So view.prototype that, let's call it Slugify. Sorry, I need to use $sign here. $sign Slugify equals Slugify post. So this is the function that I'm going to use from the index page to generate the URLs, appending the title, the Slugified title with the identifier. But first, what I need to do is I need to go to the Nuxt config file, and I need to add the plugin here. /plugins/Slugify. Okay, I'm going to restart the server so we are able to access that plugin. And what this Slugify function is doing is going to replace all the spaces with hyphen. It's going to replace all the special characters. It's going to replace ampersand with the and word. It's going to remove all the non-word characters. It's going to replace hyphen, multiple hyphen with a single hyphen. It's going to trim hyphen from start of text, and it's going to trim hyphen at the end of the text. Okay, now let's go to the pages, and let's go to the index page. That is actually this one, where we are showing all the shop posts. And here, what we need to do is change this Nuxt link so we can use not just the shop identifier like here, like this, but like this, right? With the Slugify version of the title plus the identifier. So let's do that. So I'm going to create a method here at the end using the methods attribute, methods, and I'm going to create a method called build URL. And I'm going to receive a job. And I'm going to return /shops /plus, and I'm going to append to this shops string the slugified version of the URI. So here I'm going to access the actual plugin that we just created using this dot $sign Slugify dot and here we pass the title, the identifier, and let me check really quick. Yes, the identifier and the title, shop.id and shop.title. And here we need to use that function here. Build URL, and we need to pass the job. And the same here for the views. When we pass the views, we need to pass the new URL, like this. Let's save this and let's see what happens. Okay, and now if we access any of these posts, we're gonna see that we get the slugified version of the URI with the title, the slugified version of the title plus hyphen plus the identifier of the post. So now what we need to do is we need to extract the identifier from the URI and call the GitHub API to get the shop description. Okay, now let's change this page actually to extract the identifier from the URI. So here in the async data function, what we need to do, instead of passing this params.id, that is this part of the URI, we're going to remove this and we're going to call this URI. I'm going to define the variable here. Const URI. That's going to be params.id. And here we need to extract the identifier, const id equals, and here we need to create a function to extract the identifier from the URI. I'm going to create a utils library. I'm going to create a folder. Let's call it utils. And I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it URL utils. And here I'm going to create a really simple function that is going to receive the URI, including the slugified version of the title plus the identifier, and I'm going to return just the identifier. So let's do that. Const URL utils And here I'm going to define the function that is going to be extract ID. And here I'm going to receive the URI. And here I'm going to return the substring that is going to give me the identifier of the post. URI.substring. And here is going to be the length of the URI minus 36. That is the length of the identifier. And that's pretty much all we need. Yeah, there is an error here on the file name. Yeah, this is okay. And here I'm going to export default URL utils. Okay. So I'm going to use this function here. URL first, I need to import that. So I'm going to import that here. Import URL utils from utils/URL utils. And I need to use that function here. So URL utils that extract ID, and I'm going to pass the URI. Okay, I'm going to fix this. And new line, okay, yeah, here. And that should be it. Okay. And let's refresh this. And now we should be able to access, identifier, ID. And what I need, ID. So here I need to pass the ID, not the URI ID. Okay. Let's close this. Let's go back. And now if I access, I get access to this shop posting. So now we are extracting the identifier and we are calling the GitHub API from here. Okay. So let's go back to home. And here, what is missing is the views. So I forgot to add that. And am I passing the views? Yes, I'm passing the views here. And I should have this property. Okay. I'm going to define that property really quickly. It's actually a number. And I'm going to append that to the title of the position. I'm going to add that here. And I'm going to add here views equals views. To refresh. Okay. Let's go back. And if I enter again, I don't see the views because I guess I'm not passing. Yeah, what I need to do here is actually I need to change this identifier. What I need to do here is I need to pass the path of the route because that's what we're using to track the views on the page. So I need to access using $sign, I need to access the route, that path. And that should be it. Yeah. Okay, if I go back, and if I enter again, I should get 5. Okay. And if I access this one, that is pretty long. Yeah, it generates the slugified version of the URL correctly, and we get one view. And if we go back, we're going to see the same number of views. If we enter again, you're going to see 2. So everything is working as we expect. Okay, guys, this is all I have for today. Remember to share, like, and subscribe to the channel. And I see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.